Hi there, and welcome to episode 7 of Meet the GM. And today we have Newcastle Colts GM of the Millhead Division and the Eastern Conference. If you'd like to introduce yourself.
Hello, I'm Sean Douglas, and I'm the GM of the Newcastle Colts, and have been part of another couple of Johnny's leagues for a few years now. So yeah, sort of. I thought I knew the drill, but this is going to be a whole different ball game.
It will be a bit, yeah. So obviously, so whereabout do you live then?
So at the minute, I actually live in Edinburgh, but if this had been recorded next week, I would have been in Newcastle, which would have been a bit more fitting. But never mind.
Oh, yeah, well, the last time I spoke to you, you were in Newcastle.
Yeah.
So, yeah, there you go. But, so, obviously, you could probably tell by your team name, but what is your favourite NFL team?
Well, it is the Indianapolis Colts. I think when I sort of first got into the NFL, it was fun. And I think the first game that I did watch was probably that Super Bowl between the Colts and the Bears. And yes, I know that it sort of seems like I'm a bit of a bandwagoner, but by the same token, Newcastle United haven't won anything for a long time. So let me have this one. And to be fair, the Colts haven't won anything since. So so it hasn't really worked, has it?
Well, Newcastle have been, they were pretty good last year, so hopefully they'll build on it. So,
Yeah.
maybe the Colts with the new quarterback, but you've got one of the
Maybe.
best running backs, use them. Anyway, so obviously, the team name would be Newcastle Colts because obviously you live in Newcastle and sometimes,
Mhm.
and you're a Colts fan. So
Yeah.
the next question obviously was how long you've been an NFL fan. So what year was that final? Because I can't remember off the top of my head.
So that will have been, God, that's a good question. I mean, that must have been around about 2003 or 2004, I would imagine. In fact, no, that's wrong. It'll have been about 2005 or 6, actually, I think. So yeah. Um, yeah, it's been a fair old while, to be fair. Yeah, and it's not great that I can't remember off the top of my head, but it will be about, yeah, 17 years ago now, I would think.
I know we're
Which is
getting
sort of
old.
mad to think about, really. Yeah, yeah, I know. Yeah,
I know it's a bit crazy, like so. And obviously,
yeah.
so the
I mean,
next,
this bald head isn't just an aesthetic choice.
I thought it was as
It's
well.
a
Like
lot of time coming for me as well.
pretty shiny.
Yeah, it is, isn't
You
it?
get a wee
I didn't
polish before
expect
you
it to
came
be.
on.
Yeah, well, yeah. Didn't have the makeup people here, to sort of get us ready. Yeah.
How many years have you been playing fantasy football?
Well, this I probably would say is around about. I think it's got to be about 10 years now. I think I first started playing with some friends from university and school, and then yeah, sort of have just sort of acquired other leagues over the years, and it's just got a bit more weird and wonderful every year. But yes, I think it has been around about 10 or 11 years. And in fact, I think one of my earliest nemesis was another GM in the Orkney Ball sort of yeah list of GMs, Mr. Douglas Baxter. And yeah, I think over the years I've probably held my own against him, but yeah, he might disagree with that. But then yeah, it's just sort of sprawled since then and just endless leagues now.
Well, you're my nemesis in the final because you beat me twice. You stopped me
Wow.
winning back to back in the first 2 years when I
Mm.
picked the wrong defence and went all in and lost. I think we both had really high scores in the semi final, but then
Mm.
we both had crap scores in the final, but you beat me again, so yes. You
Yeah.
beat me two of your three finals have been against me, so you're my nemesis. But I will
Mm.
get you this year.
We'll see. We'll see
I'm
about
going to
that.
try this year. If I get this league up and running, I can concentrate more.
Fair, fair, yeah. Oh.
So obviously, you are well renowned for your trades.
Yeah,
So
my,
what
my
is
reputation precedes me, it appears, yeah.
you obviously if we do a trade with you, you think you come out well until you realise you've not got your wallet left. So what is your best and worst trade offer you've actually been offered or been part of?
Well, I think the worst trade that I've probably been part of, in terms of the result, I suppose, as much as anything, um, the one which immediately comes to mind, and it's partly because the aforementioned Mr. Baxter never lets me live it down, is in one sort of Superflex Dynasty league, was where I traded away Josh Allen for essentially two pretty low first round picks, which in hindsight was a mistake because I didn't fully understand the dynamics of dynasty leagues by that point. And I mean, yeah, fortunately, no, rather unfortunately, it's just come back to bite us for multiple years now. So that was an ill-advised one. In terms of the best, yeah, well, yeah, I mean, yeah, you say that I sort of throw out a few errant trades, but that one was, I mean, yeah, you couldn't have expected that to actually work, and yet it did because I'm an idiot. Um, in terms of the best trade, I don't know. I mean, I don't mean to be funny, but there have been a few ones where it's sort of like you put it out there and you sort of like, you expect a bit of back and forth, or just sometimes an outright refusal, and then it'll be sort of like, oh, wait, they actually went for that. So I'm trying to think now of one, and I think that there was one. I think there must have been. I think it was. I can't remember if it was last season or the season before, but there was one in the league in the sort of league that we're in, the Show Me the Money League, where I sort of traded for. I think it was sort of like Tony Pollard. Um, yeah, there was three like sort of starting caliber players who were like putting up some pretty decent numbers, and I think I only had to sort of give away like a fourth round pick, a sixth round pick, and an eighth round pick, and it was sort of like, well, really, like some of those are potential sort of keeper players, and it was sort of like, okay, well, this is great. I mean, it didn't work because I didn't even make the playoffs, but if you ignore that, it was brilliant.
That wasn't McGroty, was it?
Yes, of course it was. Yeah,
He went a bit draft crazy, picking up players and dropping players off, and yeah,
yeah,
he's got plenty
he
of picks,
did.
so
I understand what he was going for, but yeah, he could have just traded them each away individually for probably more than he got in total. Well, not in total, but yes, he probably could have got a little bit more. But yeah,
definitely could have. But yes, there was some many strange trades with Groty last year. Some worked
yeah,
out, most of them didn't, and yeah. But he's got plenty of picks this year in the this year's
yeah.
draft, so
He's great. He's the first person I always go to if I ever want to trade with someone. He's just a great guy to work with.
he won't watch it probably, so you're okay. But I'll make sure I tag him.
Well, um, I think my I was looking back at sort of one league that I sort of won a couple of years ago, and I was looking at sort of like some of the picks that I sort of got, and I think that uh, I think there was one where I got sort of and who was it? I got someone in the 10th round, I think, and it was sort of like it was a running back who was like unsurprisingly because he went in the 10th round, pretty unspectacular, like or seemed it, but then was absolute dynamite. And because I'm so grateful, I can't remember his name at all. Um, yeah, there have been a few where it's sort of been like where it has been sort of like a little bit fortunate in that it's sort of has there have been some in the sort of 8th to 12th round before, and I feel like as well as the fact that I've forgotten them, I also think it would be remiss to sort of ignore the other ones. So no, I guess I can't really answer your question in terms of the worst, in terms of the best one, in terms of the worst one. I do remember there was a few years ago where I had sort of something like four fourth round picks, which in a sort of that was in the Show Me the Money League, where essentially the first two rounds were off limits, so it was quite those were quite high picks, and I remember picking like DJ Moore and Alan Robinson and someone else, and it was just like, wow, all of these guys have been super mediocre. This was fantastic. I'm so pleased that I traded away so much of last year for a bunch of guys who did essentially nothing. Um, this
DJ
is
Moore
what
might
happens, yeah.
DJ Moore might have been okay, but the fact it's non PPR,
Well, yeah, but also it was just sort of the fact that he was in Carolina as well, which never helps. So, yeah, yeah.
yeah, that's true. Yeah, that didn't help. Although I'm not sure being where he is now is going to help much either. We'll see how it goes.
We'll see. Yeah,
Maybe
yeah.
Justin Fields will learn how to throw the ball.
Mm.
So yes, obviously. So what is your least favourite team and why?
in terms of the NFL or in terms of fantasy, because probably Doug's teams would be my midfield fantasy ones.
Well, I
Um,
didn't really
but
stipulate, but yeah, I could say any Doug's team, but we'll go for NFL, like
you
so.
know, in terms of the NFL, I think realistically it has to be the Patriots, and for a multitude of reasons. One is obviously as a Colts fan, I suppose they were the sort of axis of evil during the Manning versus Brady days. I mean, also too. I mean, does anyone actually like Bill Belichick? The answer is no. No one surely likes him. So, um, and the fact that they do just even without Brady still seem to have the Colts number is quite something. But I don't know. It's just sort of like they're just so unpleasant. Yeah, I just have never cared for them. So I mean, don't get me wrong. There are contenders. There are other contenders. I've never. I guess I don't really like teams that sort of that you know. I know how ironic this is going to sound, given who I support, but I don't like it when teams move. I like it when they stay in one place. So I'm not super into the sort of Las Vegas Raiders at the moment,
Yeah.
yeah, and I'm sort of glad that there are no Chargers fans in Los Angeles. Vindication that they shouldn't have moved.
No, that's a bit of a weird one, yeah.
Hmm.
But yeah, of course the Colts, yeah. But that was a long time ago. Yeah,
Yeah, I
there's more
mean,
recent ones now, so.
yeah, exactly. So the my team's sort of evil move was sort of a long time ago, so I don't need to worry about that.
Some of the newbies won't even know about that, so you're okay, like so.
Exactly. There you go. Yeah, kids these
We'll go,
days.
we'll go with that one. So,
Hmm.
so obviously you've got plenty to choose from, but who is your favourite former player for your team? Because there'd be quite a few you could choose from.
There have been quite a few I could choose from. Yeah, I think that I guess there's multiple ways you can look at this one as well. In terms of, I guess you could sort of look at which ones have just won for you, but which ones have been really good. And do you know what it is? I guess there's one guy who I always think sort of is totally unloved and is used as a bit of a joke, particularly in fantasy circles. But I always like to pick him because I think he's always really useful, and no one ever likes him. And I actually like him, even though he's a maniac, and it's Kirk Cousins, and I don't know why. It's just I always pick him because he always puts up good numbers, and everyone just ignores him all the time because everyone wants the flashiness of Mahomes or Josh Allen, unless they trade him away for some really stupid picks, or Aaron Rodgers or whoever. But Kirk Cousins is always really effective, so I always like the fact that he's a bit of a sort of he goes under the radar, and I really enjoy that about him. I think in terms of other players, I guess from the past, I did have Drew Brees one year when he was absolutely blowing everyone away, and I mean that was very handy. In terms of like non, there was one guy that I always wanted and never got, which was Adrian Peterson, and then but in terms of like proper high quality players that I have had, ooh, um, I mean, yeah, I think I always sort of like, I mean, I guess before now, Dalvin Cook, because I always just thought he seemed fun and scored a lot of points, which is a pretty great combo. Yeah.
Okay, well, seeing that you answered the next question, we'll go back to the original
Oh,
question. Who's your former player for your team?
oh, well, what, as in from a fantasy perspective or just
No,
generally?
no, just a general player from your Colts team, like who no longer plays for the Colts, but is
Mhm.
from played for the.
Well, I think the obvious answer is always going to be Peyton Manning. I mean, he was pretty phenomenal, and it was very handy to sort of see him play most weeks until the end for the Colts, and I think that was really like I mean it did definitely help me sort of get more into sport, just sort of seeing how he was just you know like able to dissect any defense and just do whatever he wanted really.
I
I
like
think
Marvin Harrison. I like watching
well
Marvin Harrison play.
yeah, to be honest though, yeah, I mean, when I was first getting into it, obviously he was sort of like, but I think the main one I sort of remember really is more sort of Reggie Wayne, and then obviously T.Y. Hilton. I only really sort of caught the end of the Harrison era, so I don't really feel as if I saw enough of his body of work to really say he's one of my favorites. Another guy that I really always liked was Dallas Clark, because I always thought like he was always really useful as just a bit of a safety valve, but he could also just run over people, and he was massive, and he had that sort of mad facial hair before people had weird facial hair. So I really liked him. And I think in terms of, I mean, yeah, in terms of other players as well, I'm trying to think. I mean, yeah, like I quite liked. I mean, yeah, obviously there was Freeney and Mathis, and I think I always preferred Mathis because he went under the radar and he was just sort of, Freeney had his spin move and all that sort of stuff, but Mathis was just a bit more gritty. It felt like to me, it was sort of like, yeah, it's like, yeah, come on. So yeah, no, I would probably say that if you exclude Peyton Manning, I would probably say Dallas Clark and Robert Mathis are actually the two that sort of most come to mind for me. Mm.
So obviously, so who's your favourite current player?
Well, I mean, I'm very intrigued to see what Anthony Richardson is like because he could be absolutely amazing. He could not be, which is, I guess, the other side of the coin. But yeah, I'm very intrigued to see what he's like. But in terms of the guys who have actually, played a game yet, I think I think Jonathan Taylor is just like when he's not injured is just he's capable of producing moments of brilliance. And I mean, I guess Quentin Nelson is capable of running over pretty much anyone. Yeah, he's sort of like yeah, just sort of a meaty pickup truck, isn't he? He just sort of crashes over people. So if you were to force me to pick one of the two, I would probably have to say
Well,
Jonathan
you can
Taylor.
pick two.
He's the one who actually sort of does the fun stuff, isn't he? I mean, not to say that flattening people isn't fun, but Jonathan Taylor gets to flatten people and run really fast. So I mean, that's a pretty great combo. Mm, yeah.
Yeah, he is something special, and I hope he is fit because when he was fit, it was just.
Ye- Yeah,
But
I do wonder how the Colts will be if he isn't fully fit because I think, yeah, if they don't have him available, it makes everything a lot harder, and it puts a lot more pressure on an offensive line, which should be better than it was last season. But
well, they
also
paid a lot of money for it, so it should have been better than
they
what it was.
did, and yet they did not pay for a left tackle, which I still think is a massive mistake. But perhaps that's another issue. But yeah, it didn't perform last season. And I think that yeah, if you leave Richardson running for his life behind that, fine, he's pretty fast. He might get away, but eventually you'll just get clobbered like Mr.
Yeah,
Andrew Luck, who I forgot to mention earlier. But I don't want to
yeah.
always mention quarterbacks because it's easy to mention quarterbacks and stuff like this. So
Well, it is easy to remember, but
yeah.
it's still they are. Yeah, everybody loves the quarterbacks. But
Mm. Yeah.
Dallas Clark was a good choice. So, what is your favourite player who's not on your team at the moment?
I mean, other than Kirk Cousins, I'm kidding. Not Kirk
Well, you
Cousins.
can tell Kirk Cousins as well if you want.
No, I think it would have to be. I mean, the one that sort of sprang to mind first was Saquon Barkley, just because he can do a bit of everything. I am still one of these people who still really enjoys seeing running backs just do tons of just mad stuff. I mean, I absolutely love Stephon Diggs and Justin Jefferson as well. Like those two are two of my favorite players just because they're just unbelievable. In fact, I'm going to change mine, and I am going to go with Stephon Diggs. But I do remember the only sort of NFL game that I've seen in America was the Giants versus the Buccaneers at MetLife in. I mean, I think it was Barkley's rookie season, and he scored two touchdowns that day, and it was yeah. So that was 2018, yeah, and he was brilliant, and it was just like yeah, having the chance to sort of see that on his home patch was brilliant. Um, but I've always liked, yeah, I mean, to go back to my actual answer now that I've thought about it, I think that Diggs is my favourite just because the catches he makes are just unbelievable. And again, it's funny because Jefferson has come after him in Minnesota and now is probably, very, very, very possibly the best receiver in the league. But I still think that Diggs, the fact that he's done it in multiple places with different quarterbacks and stuff, I just think he's a phenomenal wide receiver, and I absolutely love watching him play. Yeah.
Yeah, he is a good player. He's just got to not spit the dummy out so much.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you could, yeah, I see what you're saying there,
I
but by
know
the
you
same
know
token,
you're it's like passionate, but there's
mm,
other players on the team and you can't get the ball
every
every
time,
throw.
yes,
You know what I
yeah,
mean?
I do agree with that, but then, yeah, I guess it's just the ego is sort of kind of justified. Yeah, he probably goes a bit OTT sometimes, but I mean, yeah, when you think about sort of the moments that he's had, like even
Oh, he's
whether
an
it be
awesome
with
player.
Minneapolis Miracle or whatever, just any of the, some of the catches he's produced over the past few years. Yeah, you can see why the guy's sort of like, I'm pretty good at this. Yeah.
But yeah, that was more of a New Orleans cock up than a miracle. But
Yeah, well, exactly.
that was
Yeah, I mean, it was, but let's not
it was
deny
still
some pretty
amazing.
great.
But yeah,
Yeah.
it was an epic finish. But
Mm.
bloody hell, what a mess.
A,
But anyway,
a
so we'll go.
fantastic piece of alliteration as well. I mean, yeah, I'm a big fan of that. Mm.
Well, so we'll go back to who's your former player not on your team. So who's no longer in the NFL? Is it one of the Colts? What is your
Mm.
favourite player?
Mm. Um, hmm. I think
We know it won't be Tom Brady.
no, no, it won't be. But I mean, for all what I said about the sort of yeah, I think for all what I did say, I would. I guess I'm a little bit torn here as well because again, Adrian
Well, you can
Peterson
have
is
two.
someone. Well, okay, thank you because I'm very bad at being decisive. Yeah, so I would probably have to say you'll notice that basically all of these players will just be attacking, but will be offensive players as well, which I sort of feel a little bit bad about, but also not really. So I would probably say Adrian Peterson would be in the mixer just because again when he was sort of in his pomp he was just unbelievable, wasn't he? I mean, yeah, it just undeniable.
They knew he was
Um,
coming, but they couldn't stop him.
Exactly, yeah. It was just like, yeah, and he could do it any different kind of way as well. He could just outrun you, he could run over you, he could, sidestep you, or he could just do anything. And uh, yeah, I guess when I was sort of first getting into the NFL, he was a guy who was, well, as I was getting more into the NFL, he was a player who was sort of quite, who obviously earned a position of prominence. I think the other one would have to be Calvin Johnson. Um, you just have to wonder with him what could have been if he had have been anywhere else. I mean, apart from the New York Jets, but yeah, if he had have been anywhere other than Detroit or Cleveland, but yeah, if he had have been almost anywhere else, he
With a
would
half
have
decent quarterback.
exactly. Yeah, he could have been. I don't know. Even Matt Stafford was pretty good, but it's sort of just like yeah, they had nothing really around them, and you do just sort of wonder if he had have been somewhere else and been able to really sort of utilize his talent on a team that really was sort of worthy of it. I mean, it has to go down as one of the sort of like big sort of questions of like if he had have been on a good team what sort of records could he actually have broken? I know that he sort of set this sort of single season receiving record and that sort of stuff, but you do sort of wonder what else. I mean, could he have chased Jerry Rice or anything like that? I mean, that's a pretty massive figure to have hit, but if he had have had just again like a better team around him and hadn't decided to pack it all in a bit early, I don't know. I guess I'm just curious as to what was his actual sort of ceiling, and would it ever have been reached? I suppose.
Well, it's good, obviously, he packed it in his terms. You know what I mean? He's had
Exactly.
enough.
Yeah.
He didn't want to be one of those great receivers that play the last couple of years, nowhere near as good as they are, for a
Mm,
team possibly worse than Detroit.
mm,
Maybe the Jets back then, or
yeah.
he quit on his own terms, and he quit while he was still good.
And yeah, at a very good level as well. Yeah, and I think there's something admirable in that. If you're Detroit, it must be pretty infuriating to have Sanders and Johnson sort of retire early because you're crap. But I guess there's a lesson to be learned there somewhere.
Yeah, they were crap.
Yeah, don't be
They
crap,
were, they
and
were,
then they'll stick
yes.
around, maybe.
actually do okay in the Thanksgiving games and don't embarrass them on national television.
Yeah,
Sorry, have we got Lions fans in this league? I'm not sure. Hope not.
not anymore.
Yeah. Well, maybe mute that one out. It's okay. So, what is your favourite NFL or NFL fantasy podcast?
Um, oh, this is a good question. I think the one which sort of, to be honest, I'm going to be honest. I'm not really a sort of huge podcast sort of guy. Um, so this is going to be a bit of an awkward one. I think sort of.
The Show Me the Money one.
Yeah, well, exactly. Yeah, to be honest, that is probably it because it is the only one that I listen to. So yeah, you're number one, Johnny. So there you go.
Hey.
I think that has to be.
Does
It
that mean
does
that
have to
Craig's
be.
number one too? Because he's my co-host.
Well, yeah, I guess it does. But I mean, yeah, like take the credit for yourself. Take the win. Yeah, you
No, thank
you
you
are
very
number
much.
one in spite of Craig, not because of Craig. Yes.
That's a good answer, that one. Like, I'm sure Craig's going to love that one.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you're going to hear all about it through the season.
I will
So,
because I'll be listening to it. I won't be listening to any others. So yeah.
what is your favourite NFL related movie or documentary?
I think some of the earlier seasons of Hard Knocks were interesting. Like I do sort of think the sort of explosion of sort of behind the scenes content in all sports has sort of devalued it because A, there's so much of it, and B, teams have realized actually maybe we shouldn't just reveal everything in front of some TV cameras. But I do sort of think that the earlier seasons, the ones with the Jets and some of the other ones sort of like from back in the days were really interesting and insightful and just a bit mad. Um, I think in terms of the films, I mean, yeah, one of my well, in terms of films, I would probably say Any Given Sunday. I mean, it's an obvious one, but for a reason. And I think that in terms of TV series, non-documentary TV series, I absolutely loved Friday Night Lights. With Coach Taylor and Tim Riggins and all the rest of them. It was great. Really, really enjoyed that. There were a couple of series that I wasn't as fussed on. But I thought that overall, like, yeah, it was interesting.
Early on,
When
it
you
was
actually
brilliant.
look back at that series, there's not a huge amount of sort of action, I suppose. Because I guess for obvious reasons they couldn't really sort of play full games or whatever. But the moments that they had sort of did create suspense, and I thought the way they sort of built the world around football was really interesting and really good. And the characters were great. So yeah, I mean, yeah, I just thought that was a brilliant piece of TV.
Yeah, I've got the box set somewhere.
Mm.
But yeah, it's just, I didn't like the film. The series was
Mm.
awesome. Early on, just when he's driving through the village, like this town, and it's all go, the team and all that, and it's all
Go
focusing
Panther.
on the.
Yeah.
It's just probably what it's like in a lot of small American towns, and it's
Mm.
just so well done. And hearing
Yeah,
him on the
I mean,
radio talking about him, slagging him off, and
mm.
he's upped his whole life to go there, and it's just so good. Like, yeah, but I say later
I,
on it wasn't so good, but the early seasons were good. So
oh, I did sort of I did sort of find the change to sort of the change between schools really interesting. I thought that there was like one storyline, the one where it was sort of like Landry, this sort of unassuming guy, becomes a spoiler alert, kills someone. I did sort of think that was a bit.
yeah,
I wasn't as fussed on that, but I did sort of think the whole sort of like East versus West sort of thing was interesting as it went along. So I really enjoyed that. I really enjoyed that show. Yeah. I still haven't actually read the book on which it's based, so I've got it. I just haven't got around to reading it yet. So that is something that I will eventually have to read. Yeah.
it's a book. It's a book by the same title, or is it a different title?
Yeah, yeah. It was the one which sort of inspired the film. It's Friday Night Lights, and it's by Buzz Bissinger or something like that. Yeah, and he basically spent a year with the team in sort of small Texas town, and yeah, just wrote a book about it. Yeah, yeah. It's apparently. fantastic, but I wouldn't know because I haven't read it yet. So I should really get around to it before I
Well,
recommend it.
I've got a couple of good books. I just never get with three kids. I've never got a chance to
Yes.
read anything. So, but like we used
Mm,
to have a bookcase full of books, and they're now in a box somewhere in the shed because well, you never get a
mm,
chance to read them. So what's the point in
yeah.
having them out? So and then so the next question is this is from Craig.
Oh.
Not the well actually there was two, but I haven't saved the one about how do you think the Colts are going to do. But you can answer that one if you want.
Okay. Well,
And
yeah, I'll answer that one
and
if you
how do
want.
you think you'll finish in your division?
I have absolutely no idea.
So on NFL terms, how do you think the Colts are going to do this year? And how do you think Richardson's going to do?
Well, um, I don't think it's going to be a fantastic season. However, I think because of the nature of the team generally, I don't think it's going to be a disaster either. Um, I think Richardson will be fine, but I think at least for the first few games, perhaps it'll be Gardner Minshew, who fine. He's not exactly going to be an MVP caliber player, but he is like serviceable. He's not a guy that you would expect to just be absolutely hopeless. Which
No, he does have he's got a swagger about himself, and he does
Mm.
okay. Like he'll have
Mm.
really good games, and he'll have really the bad games, but it won't be truly awful.
Yeah, exactly. So it's not like I see the Colts being in the running for the sort of number one pick or anything next year. Um, so, and I guess the division that they're in is bad, which probably helps them in that sort of Jacksonville are probably sort of by default the sort of best team in it, and Tennessee are kind of good, but also a little bit weird in that they still haven't really got their sort of quarterback situation sort of set really, and they don't have any one. I guess they do have DeAndre Hopkins now, but they don't really have anyone else to throw to, and you know, um, and then Houston are still ultimately Houston, so let's not even worry about them. I think the Colts are still in the midst of what I would probably have to call a bit of a. It's not a rebuild, but it's a well, it's a rejig, I suppose. I'm curious to see how some of the new players do. Josh Downs seems to have had a bit of sort of people seem quite intrigued by him. I'm quite interested to see what happens with Alec Pierce now, because I mean, he was brought in, he was drafted last season to be sort of quite a physical threat, and I mean, yeah, I think the sort of the flux on the offensive side generally, it I think that's I think it's going to be really interesting to see how well the new head coach sort of meshes everything together, really, because last season nothing worked. The offensive line didn't work. Taylor was knackered. Um, the wide
Yeah, they
receivers
should have
didn't
just
really
they
get
should have
any
just put
going.
Taylor in the IR instead of keep on playing him like because he wasn't fit. So
No.
why injure your best player worse by keep on playing him?
Mhm.
You know what I mean?
Well, I
Stick him
mean,
on that
the
hard.
Colts do just kind of do that, and eventually it lost
Oh
them
yeah, well look at
man
luck.
and
Yeah.
luck. And so,
Who
let's not change the habit of a lifetime, right? Um,
who was the tight end that scored three touchdowns at the end? Was that was the rookie tight end last year? Was it not?
there was it Jelani? Jelani Woods sort of got a bit of
Delaney
attention.
Woods. Yeah,
Um,
near the end of the season.
Yeah, he seems to be someone who people are pretty sort of like think could be sort of someone who sort of does
He's
well and
big.
goes a bit under the yeah, he is, and I mean
He
yeah, the
is. He
Colts
is
have
very
sort of
tall. Yeah.
I mean yeah, they have like Mo Ali Cox as well, who again they just drafted a big guy who this is the thing. They sort of drafted him a few years ago as this massive guy who they thought could just win sort of, jump balls and stuff. And it never quite panned out. But now it does seem like there's a bit more confidence with Jelani Woods. Um, and it seems like they're sort of trying to get a bit more of a physical identity on offense, I suppose. But I don't know really because I mean I think Josh Downs is one of the first sort of receivers they've sort of drafted under 6 foot in a few years. So it represents a bit of a change from Ballard, but I think he realised that he has to sort of mix it up a little bit. And also, it sounds like Reggie Wayne was particularly sort of high on him. So if Reggie Wayne's sort of saying he's good, that is pretty encouraging. So To answer your question, I don't think it's going to be a disastrous season. I don't think it's going to be a great season. I don't think the Colts will make the playoffs, but I also don't think they'll, be in contention for. I don't think they'll be, in the top three or something, in the top three picks. However, I would still not be surprised if they were sort of, I don't know, top 10 would not be, I could still see that being a possibility, really.
Well, I know it's not good, but it's also not bad. Going
Well,
top 10, you got.
yeah, it gives them a chance to rebuild, but then I do sort of wonder if Ballard will have the chance to sort of keep it going then, because it's like, well, that is a long time to stick with the same guy and to not, and yeah, back to back sort of picks in that sort of area of the draft would not go down well with the maniac. I'm not talking about Shaquille Leonard. I'm talking about Jim Irsay. So yeah,
Yeah, you don't know what he's going to do. That's yeah, he's
yeah,
a bit.
exactly. He's incredibly unpredictable.
Okay, so are you ready for your question from Matthew, the one I sent you?
I
I
am,
thought I'd
yeah,
give you a heads up for that because that's a tough one, like so.
yeah. It was. So I mean, to go over what you said. So the question was, do you want to read out the question, or do you want me to
It
sort of
says,
read out?
could you come up with a small roster of one quarterback, one running back, one tight end,
Mm-hmm.
one wide receiver, one kicker, and I put in, he said one extra spot, so I said a defensive player,
Mm-hmm.
of non-American players. So he's been suggesting that Usain Bolt was a wide receiver for
Mm-hmm.
his speed, that sort of thing. So,
Okay, well, I hope this is within the rules. I haven't sort of went with any NFL or American football players. However, some of them are American, so I'm going to
oh, that's
allow it.
okay.
So
That's
yeah,
good.
that's fine. So I thought for quarterback, I think the main thing you want is someone who's going to be able to throw the ball fast and pretty hot, someone accurate and fast. So to me, the obvious one there was a baseball. A baseball player. So the person I do not claim to have an encyclopedic knowledge of baseball. So I did look it up before this, and Garrett Cole of the New York Yankees seems to be having a very good season. I can't claim to know if he is or not, but that's what the internet tells me. So I sort of feel like, well, okay, yeah. And also, if he plays for the Yankees, he's used to sort of big game pressure. Used to
True.
playing for a sort of big team. So I sort of feel like, can throw it fast, can throw it accurately, and can deal with pressure. So I'm sort of like, and he's yeah. I don't know how tall he is, but I think he's sort of at least 6 foot. So I don't think he's sort of going to get squashed like some sort of I don't know unathletic Kyler Murray or something. Yeah. So running back. I thought, obviously, again, pace is going to be pretty important, but you also want someone who's got a bit of beef on them. So I went with Erling Haaland, the Manchester City forward, because I sort of think the guy is absolutely rapid. However, he is able to sort of fend off defenders and sort of he does have a physical presence about him. He can sort of, he's got a good leap, so for catches and stuff, and he's got a bit of yeah, he's surprisingly shifty for a guy who is good at everything. It's quite annoying. So yeah, I think he would be my running back, and then I think for wide receiver and tight end, I think you have to go with just big people. Um, so I went to a lot of basketball for these two. So I think for wide receiver, I went with Janias Antetokounmpo. I don't know if you. No, I've never seen an American broadcaster actually pronounce his surname, so I'm just gonna
Well,
say
you'll
Janias.
have to you'll have to text me that one so I can look it up whenever the
Yeah.
editing because I've never heard of that one. Oh,
Okay.
is that
Well,
that
if you
big
look
massive
at his
Greek
first
boy?
name, so
Giannopoulos.
he's yeah. So he's Greek. He's 6'11". I mean, his nickname is the Greek Freak, which is a pretty good start anyway. But he's 6'11". He's he
He's pretty
moves
big, yeah.
relatively quickly. He is a big guy. So I'm sort of like, if you put it up for him, he's probably going to come down. His hands are ginormous as well. So he would be one that sort of sprang to mind. And I think a tight end. I had Nikola Jokic, who is I believe, the two-time now, or is it three-time MVP for the NBA, who is now part of the sort of champion Denver Nuggets. So Yeah, again, he is just a big guy. Like he just looks massive. And he's Serbian, so in theory, I imagine that means that he's sort of kind of hard. I mean, Serbian people just have a reputation of being hard as nails, don't they? So I just
Oh,
sort
did
of
you not
see.
see? Did you not see his interview when they won? And he was like,
I just want to go
When's
home.
the parade?" And he's like, "I want to go home."
Yeah,
You got to
yeah,
say for the
yeah.
parade. When's the parade? In 2 days' time. I want to go home.
So then you'll actually
Family
really
man.
enjoy the
Yeah.
NFL lifestyle, where it's just sort of regular season of 18 weeks, and then you can bugger off. I mean, if he plays for someone like the Jets or something, then yeah. Oh well, I mean maybe not the current Jets, but the Jets of every other year. Yeah. So then
But
kicker.
then at that height, he would catch anybody's pass. So
Well, exactly. This is the thing, yeah. And he's big, and he's got he's surprisingly agile for a big guy as well. So I'm sort of thinking, yeah, those two would be sort of weapons. In terms of a kicker, you just want someone who's going to be able to drill it pretty hard and pretty accurately every time. And I think Kevin De Bruyne is probably the guy that immediately comes to mind because he can sort of he can basically do whatever he wants with his right foot, and he's very very good. So yeah, he would be the one that would immediately come to mind.
you've
Just
gone for fairly modern players, haven't you? You're not going for any old ones like.
well, yeah, I mean, I just sort of, yeah, I didn't really think of using sort of older ones to be honest, but I sort of just thought, well, yeah, conditioning now and everything like that. Yeah, I just sort of thought that would maybe make sense, but also I just forgot to think about the past. I was just too rooted in,
There's a
in,
lot of good
in
free kick takers in the old days, or the old
Yeah, I
ones,
guess this is the thing though, right? I mean, if you went for someone like David Beckham or
or
something
or
like that,
rugby kickers.
yeah,
That
that's
bloody English boy that always kicks the penalties. What was his name years ago?
Johnny Wilkinson,
Joe.
a
Yeah,
former Newcastle Falcons player, by the way. Yeah. If I had have been using, yeah, sort of players from back in the day, then yeah, I might have went for him if I had have thought to do that, but I did not. So yeah, but I did just sort of think Kevin De Bruyne as well can hit it pretty far, pretty accurately. So yeah.
Roberto Carlos. He can bend it anyway.
Yeah, yeah, and he can he just leathers everything. However, a
Yeah,
lot of his just sort of went anywhere. So yeah, I mean,
they
yeah.
didn't have to be a good kicker.
Well, yeah, I don't know.
Look
Personally, I
at
like
look at the
this is the
kickers that get
point.
paid kickers. They can't kick an extra point. You know what I mean? So
And then in terms of the wild card, well, this one actually I'm sort of picking on the spot because I didn't write that one down. Um, who will I go for?
defensive player.
A defensive player. Whoa.
You got to have a defensive player in the Orkney League because
Well, I
there's
guess
two
this is the
defensive
I
players.
guess this is
So
the question then though. Do you go for sort of like someone agile and stuff who could be a defensive back, or do you what will score more in the
well,
Auckland
I
League?
would probably go like Lomu because he could run over anybody and could tackle
Hmm.
anybody from the
Yeah,
New
that's
Zealand. He was up, and
yeah.
obviously
I mean,
Matthew
yeah.
suggested like Jeff Capes because nobody would want to mess with him in a fight.
Hmm.
Can so
Yeah,
it can be up to you, but there got to be some good players who can help. So if rugby, you're probably thinking about for a player that will just
yeah.
leather you if you come past the line.
Hmm. Yeah. Oh God, this is difficult. This is more difficult than I would have thought.
But then you think if you go defensive player, if they catch an interception, if they grab them up, they've got to be able to run the other way too.
Yeah,
So
exactly. Yeah.
there's an athletic bit.
Um.
So
So I mean, because yeah, my sort of instinctive thing would have been you want someone still who's pretty big but quick. So again, I would still sort of go with sort of an NBA sort of guy, because again, most of them are at least 6'5" or something, and they have to be sort of quick, don't they? Because they have to go up and down the court. I mean, yeah, yeah. So I would probably have said. Um, uh, Yeah, yeah. I'm really hoping that you can sort of cut out this dead air.
but as
Um,
long as you don't move your head, I can.
okay, I'll just pause my head for a while. Um, I will go with Kawhi Leonard because he has massive hands and he's big and he's I could imagine him deflecting some passes away and stuff. Admittedly, that I don't know if that helps for sort of scoring because I guess he would intercept quite a lot. Admittedly, he's quite injury prone, so that might count against him if he never plays. But if he did play, he would definitely, possibly, maybe get some interceptions. So he's the one who instinctively came to mind.
Good stuff. And of course, last but not least, what's your question for the next GM? I know you were
So
thinking about that one, so
yeah, so this one, my question would be that if so, my question to the next GM is. If you could have one player from any period in NFL history and sort of bring them into your current sort of fantasy team, who would it be? Would it be someone like LaDainian Tomlinson or Adrian Peterson or who knows, Barry Sanders, or would you just go for someone like Peyton Manning or Tom Brady or maybe Randy Moss in this era where everyone seems to like wide receivers a ton all of a sudden? Who would you pick? So. Yeah, that is my question. Which
it's a good one, that's it. Yeah.
all-time
So,
NFL player for fantasy purposes?
so could have one player from any period to join your team.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good question, that one. So a bit easier than the last one you got.
Well, I mean, mine was a sort of multi-aspect one, so it was quite enjoyable. And until I realised that it's actually really hard to think of people who are good
I may
at.
actually send that clip I sent you and put it in the chat and then see if anybody else wants to try and answer it.
Yeah,
And
definitely.
send it via DM, and I'd be interested to see what replies I get and who I get them from. So,
Yeah, I'll
and
be
then I
very
can
intrigued to
post it
sort of
up. So,
to sort of see what other people say because I have absolutely no doubt that I've missed a bunch of really good people. I will say that, as is very obvious, I've just went for totally sort of current modern day sort of athletes. But yeah, if anyone thinks that I've missed anyone from sort of back in the day, then I'm very curious to hear what they've got to say.
that's no bother. I'll, like I say, I'll post it up and see what they say. Because I sent
Yeah.
it to you, so I can just forward it to everybody in
Yeah.
the group. And,
Mm.
I'd be interested to see who actually listens to it and actually wants to try it. Because it'll be a fun one. So that's the
Mm.
main thing.
Yeah, it is definitely a challenging one, but it's quite fun in its own right because yeah, I imagine everyone will have quite different ways of looking at it. I mean, yeah, the whole the idea of Usain Bolt at sort of wide receiver. I did consider that for a while, and then I just sort of thought, well, I don't know. I guess I just sort of thought of his sort of his football experience where someone who played with him in Australia, Ross McCormack, basically said of him, he was really really fast, and everyone was like really impressed, and then they realised it was totally useless. Um, that he's totally useless because he couldn't do anything. So that was sort of my
Well, in fairness,
yeah, it's
Hibs
it's
had a
one
player.
thing to sort of run in behind, but then if if he can't actually catch it, or if he
Well,
has
Hibs
no
had a player called Ivan Sproul,
Hmm.
and he was fast as hell. Barring the hat trick he scored against Rangers and the two goals he scored another time at Ibrox, he would usually run out of pitch by the time he controlled the ball because he couldn't stop, or he
Hmm.
would stop, but the ball he was so fast, but the ball just didn't want to go where he wanted it to go. Apart from that hat trick he scored at Ibrox, which is always
Yeah.
sorry, Craig, but anybody that scores a hat trick at Ibrox is a hero, even a Hearts fan, I have to admit. But yeah, and it was just it was so fun to watch, and everybody loved him. But
Hmm.
you knew he'd probably fall over the ball when it got to him because he was going too fast. So yeah, so you can be as fast as you want, but it doesn't mean you're going to be any good.
Well, yeah, it has to be controlled pace, or yeah, like make it fun, but also make it useful, please. Yeah.
It was fun to watch him, but it wasn't fun. It wasn't very useful, and it wasn't fun being a Hibs fan watching him do it.
Yeah.
But yes. So anyway, so that's all the questions and that done. So I would say thank you for coming on this evening.
No, thank you very much for having us.